Library Leadership Podcast is brought to you by Innovative. Focused on accelerating libraries' impact on the world, Innovative helps spark connections between libraries and their communities. With a comprehensive portfolio of solutions for libraries worldwide, Innovative technology makes resources accessible to patrons near and far. Learn more at www.iii.com/podcast.
This is Adrienne Herrera-Juarez. You're listening to Library Leadership Podcast, where we talk about libraries and leadership and speak with guests who share their ideas, innovations, and strategic insights in the profession. Does developing an annual report for your library make you nervous? If so, you're not alone. But fear no more. On this show, I talk with Patrick Bodily, Library Director of Independence Public Library in Oregon. He shares ways we can make an impact with our annual reports and gives pro tips on how to share our stories in ways that are eye-catching and understandable. There will be lots of impactful annual reports coming out for those who listen in. Enjoy the show. Patrick, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for talking with me today about annual reports. We all know how important it is to present library information in a way that makes an impact. Why is this?
I think one of the biggest reasons that it is important is that everything we do is really broken down into three different areas. There's what we did, how well we did it, and of course, is anybody better off? I mean, in the library world, those are the three answers we're trying to answer. What did we do? How well did we do it? And is anyone better off because of what we've done? And so the way that we can express that, we want to show people the importance of what it is that we do. Our stakeholders, funders, city council, library board, whoever, we really want to not just show them this is what we've done and this is the change we've made, but we want to wow them with it. And so that's where the visual aspects or annual reports come into play. That's where what we do really can pop in their eyes is, if we hand them a flyer or a bookmark or whatever format you've got to say, hey, look, these are our highlights from the last year. This is our report from the last year or 2 years or 5 or whatever it is that you're creating. This is the way that we can make that impact. If you just hand them a spreadsheet, people are going to kill over. If you just hand them a document, typed up words that maybe describes every program you've done during the last year, it's the same information, but people aren't going to digest it as well as if it was something presented in a way that makes that impact with different call-outs and color and font and all those things like that. So that is really what it is right there, the importance of explaining what we did, how well we did it, and is anyone better off because of what we've done.
I like that. And I like what you say about wowing people. So you're a self-described data nerd. As such, what would you tell us about how we can gather and use data about our library activity from year to year?
I think I'm a data nerd in my mind because it's everywhere. We already have all the data, especially in the library world. I mean, every transaction, every circulation that you have, you already have how many patrons there were, a number of checkouts that there were at the time where they automatically renewed. And using our systems, that information is populated and saved for us. So because we already have it all, we don't need to reinvent the wheel to get this done. If we look at what's readily available, we can look at what it tells us, right? So if we can see, okay, last year we had X number of people show up, and the year before was higher or lower, or there's trend data everywhere. It's just all around us. And that's the thing that's amazing is that we don't have to just figure out, okay, what could I possibly calculate? It's already there. Not only that, but it helps us to look, okay, last year we had this many programs, for example, and they were either a hit or they weren't. We had people come or they didn't. And so are we going to continue down that path? It helps us with future forecasting. It helps us as we write, as leadership, we work in building and creating our strategic plan so that we know where the library is going to go in the future. The data is helpful for all of those things, and it's already there. We can just gather the stuff that we already have, public libraries across the country are already submitting an annual report to their state library agency. So you already have to gather the numbers to pass it on anyway. So you might as well use that data to help build your case, to help wow the funders, wow the supporters that you're trying to impress with all the cool things that we're already doing.
Right. We do gather a lot of data in libraries. So once we have it, how do we make it eye-catching and also understandable?
So there's one thing I guess I just want to make sure everyone understands is that you have tons of data, but you don't have to put it all out there on one thing. And so the key is that KISS principle. Keep it simple. We'll say sweetheart. Just one graph per story. Choose the theme that you want to build on. Are you specifically talking about your programs? That's great. Then stick with the program. Use color or typeface or bold or different font to your advantage. There are all these different things that we can do once we have it to make those call-outs. That's really what it is, because realistically we're going to have a combination of some type of text and some visual aspect, whatever it is that you're creating. And so if you stick with that, you want your highlights to actually be highlights. You don't want to bury what it is you're trying to tell them. And then, of course, what we can do the most to make it eye-catching and understandable is tell your audience what it is you want them to know. It can be as simple as if you're creating a graph and you want people to see that circulation has increased over the last 5 years, that you title your graph, Circulation at the Public Library has increased over the last 5 years by such and such percent. Like, you just tell them the story you want them to know.
And you allude to telling a story with this. So how can data tell a story in an annual report?
So the annual report is just that. It is data. And just so that everyone is kind of clear, I know annual report is used a lot of different ways and a lot of different things. In this case, I'm talking about some sort of something that you have printed up or published online or whatever that tells the highlights. But remember the story that you do want to tell. That's the key right there. If the story you want to tell is that we're growing, great. If the story that you want to tell for this next year, I see in my crystal ball that a lot of annual reports are going to say, this is how COVID affected us. We had to shut down for this many weeks. Our electronic circulation either went up or down. Our physical circulation definitely went down. Programs dropped, but virtual programs rose if we were doing online story times. So remember that story it is that you want to tell, and those three things. What did you do? How well did you do it? And is anyone better off because of what you did? Pull those highlights. Is anyone better off? That's the heartstring tugging section where people are going to say, oh, I love my library because we had, Joe from down the road was able to come in and got a job interview because he used the online resources at the library to submit that job application or whatever it is. So pull out the highlights and keep your audience engaged that way with little stories or little tidbits. Or if you have a document and a little box with just big, bold 95% increase in circulation or whatever it is you're trying to tell, that's really what it is right there. Remember that your annual report is data, and remember the story that you want to tell.
So what are your top tips for sharing information in annual reports?
My very first tip is that I can do this, and so anyone else can as well. Use the tools that you have. I don't have a graphic design background. I've watched I've watched more than that, YouTube tutorials or read books or anything like that, but you don't need to have an Adobe Illustrator or professional license or a professional graphic designer on staff. You can use the tools you have. Now, that being said, also you need to remember your audience. The story that you're going to tell in a bookmark that you're passing out to the Storytime moms is 100% going to be a different story than the story that you give in your print up either trifold or single page that you're passing out to the city council or the county commissioners, because the audience is different. The Storytime mom just wants to see the programs and the highlights and the fun things, whereas your funders, they want to know that their money is being used responsibly. Also, it's important that you remember just the basics of graphic design. Like I said, I've watched YouTube videos, things like that. There's a great series from gcflearnfree.org that they've actually posted them all on YouTube. But you can go see the fundamentals of graphic design or the fundamentals of color theory or the fundamentals of font, and it just kind of explains the different keys in creating something eye-catching. And my last tip, please, 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 everyone can quote me on this for forever, but plagiarize and localize. Find something that you like that someone else has put out there and see how you can tweak it to make it yours, especially in an annual report. If you found someone does this awesome graph or tells the story of what they've done over the last year, use it. I mean, that's why we are here. Librarians love to share. That's why we go to conferences, is to get ideas from other people that are already doing stuff. That's why we meet together for coffee mornings or tea get-togethers, or why we're parts of consortia, is so that we can learn from other people and localize it to our individual situation. And find it from everywhere. I mean, just because you're a small rural library in Oklahoma with a service area of 257 doesn't mean you can't steal something from a much larger library, Los Angeles Public or New York Public. Or, I mean, there are good ideas out there everywhere. And it goes the other way as well. There are some small libraries that are doing amazing things. The larger libraries can localize those programs as well, and especially those graphic design principles and those annual reports that they've got going on.
What tools do libraries need to create annual reports?
So really, what you have and are comfortable with is what you need to create a good annual report. If you have Microsoft Word or Excel, great. If you are really comfortable and familiar with the Google suite of docs and sheets, that's great. If you know Illustrator, that's great. If you have a Canva license, that's great. Anything that you have and have access to is what you need. You don't need to go out and buy anything fancy. You don't need to go and do anything one way or the other. I've seen libraries have tons of success with Canva and other specifically graphic design. We make posters. But the reason that they are success with that is because they already have a license and they're already familiar with the software that they use to make their program flyers or to make their Dewey numbers on the side of their stacks is what they've used that for. So it's just something they're comfortable with. If you live in Microsoft Word or live in Microsoft Excel, then that's what you need to create a visual annual report, because that's what you're comfortable with, so it's going to look a lot better.
Use what you have. That's good. Anything else you'd like to share?
Just remember, when you're creating an annual report, that you're the expert. This is your data and your library and your story, and you're the one that knows it all. Back when I was in school, I had a professor that told me, whenever you are in front of the class and you're presenting on your research or whatever, you're the one that did the research. The only reason I'm asking questions, or anyone in the class is asking questions, is because they really don't know, and they want you to tell them. The same thing applies here. If you present this annual report to the city council and they say, oh, I didn't know this, why is, it's not because they're trying to stump you. It's because they really didn't know. You are the expert. This is your library, your data, and your story.
Do you have a favorite management or leadership book, and why?
So I have a couple things. I love the book by Renee Evanson, Powerful Phrases for Effective Customer Service. It has just been great, not just for leadership and management, but also as I've read that to work with my direct reports, as they can bring it into their life as well. And then the Ask a Manager book and blog, but most especially the blog. Allison Green is the one who runs it, and it is great. I have my RSS feed set so that I get the updates on that Ask a Manager every time something's posted, not just weekly or daily, but I get the update as soon as she's posted something out there. Yeah, Allison Green's Ask a Manager and Renee Evanson's Powerful Phrases for Effective Customer Service.
Patrick, in closing, what does being a librarian mean to you personally?
I think that for me, the best part about being a librarian is that we are trying to bring equality across the board. We're trying to bring the haves and support them as well as the have-nots. Everything from broadband equity to equality in information access and resources. We don't care where you land on social issues or political issues or economic spectrums. We just want you to use the library, and we want to help you use it better to find the answer to the questions or resources that people have or need. That's what it is to me, is being that champion of equality.
Patrick, thank you for being on the show with me today. It's been fantastic learning from you, and I can't wait to see all of those amazing annual reports that are going to come after hearing from you. So I appreciate it.
I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you so much for having me.
It's been a pleasure. You've been listening to Library Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Adrienne Herrick Juarez. Our producer is Nate Vineyard. More episodes can be found at libraryleadershippodcast.com, where you can now subscribe to have new shows delivered right into your email inbox. You can also find the show on Apple iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time. We would like to thank the Park City Library for their dedicated support of this show. The opinions expressed on this show are those of the speaker and do not necessarily reflect the views of Library Leadership Podcast or our sponsors.